Yesterday into today with the whole news cycle, will probably continue through the weekend into next week, was a perfect example of why I'm always harping on the media messaging thing, right? Like the target of my ire is always the media. Because unfortunately, when you see how the media sausage is made, you can't unsee it. And I think this is just my worldview. All of these problems we have right now, if you want to see it that way, all created by this mass media that has been completely corrupted. Not for the past 5 years, 10 years, I mean decades. You start to fix that, and you start to fix a lot of problems. So there's a great update in trust in mainstream media. It's the lowest it's ever been, so that's the first good thing. But yesterday's news cycle, like I said, is such a classic example of how you win it and how things are changing. It should make you feel good. It really should. Because one of the people coming out of the woodwork now for the messaging on, happens to be the Democratic side, is none other, and I couldn't believe this, than Hanoi Jane Fonda. Now, we'll get into the story about Jane Fonda for you youngsters who don't know why she was called back in the day Hanoi Jane Fonda. But she's back, and she has a very prominent voice now in mainstream media. And there's a reason why you're seeing her do interviews for the first time in, I don't know, 15 years maybe, outside of a stupid award show ceremony or something. She's back, and there's a reason why. And there's also a reason why the war on the messaging part of this whole government shutdown is being won by one of the sides, and it's because of humor. One side gets it and the other doesn't, but we'll get into that as well. But thanks for being here all week long throughout this whole news cycle. Welcome to Friday. I hope you have an awesome weekend. If it's Saturday or Sunday when you're watching or listening later, either the audio-only podcast or the replay, welcome to you too. Thanks for the downloads, follows, all that good stuff, all your favorite platforms. Let's get right into it. We're going to start off with this. A little bit different, though. Let's not get into the nuts and the bolts and the numbers and the crunching and the government shutdown stuff. There's government budgets. There's nothing more complicated or obtuse or boring to listen to, by design, by the way. And there's a reason why they do this. There's a reason why it's so complicated, so that normal people like you and me don't pay attention, right? Because most of us are like, just tell me what they settle on so I can adjust my life around it. That's usually how it happens. There's a little bit different angle on this one, though. This time around, it is a little bit different. First of all, in the messaging, which I'm keyed into, and also, they're dead serious in this administration about cutting these programs, and this is the opportunity I think they've been looking for. But let's give you the update, all right? First of all, the messaging. So this has been hilarious to follow all week long, You know, about the memes. I spent a couple of days talking about this. It all started off with the White House. Actually, President Trump. I won't even say the White House yet. President Trump reposting a video meme. You've all seen it. I showed it too. Of Hakeem Jeffries and Chucky Schumer there. And all of a sudden, the Mexican sombrero and the mariachi music, which I think is key to the story of Hakeem. But what the story here is, as we said the other day, it got people to laugh at this. It got people to look at it and understand what it's all about. So that was the first indication that the messaging war on this, to try to explain to people what's happening, was being won by the administration, by the Trump White House, because it was just brilliantly done. It's gotten, God, I don't know, at this point, days after, tens of millions of hits. Almost everybody has seen it. You bring this up at work, even the people who hate Trump will say, oh, I saw that. Yeah, it actually was pretty funny. It was effective, and it continues to roll on. But here's what's happened since. I don't know whether you can simplify it by just saying it's about taking a joke. But the Democrats aren't handling this well. Hakeem Jeffries went on multiple interviews explaining how upset he was about this, which, of course, led to more memes. And then, of course, it led to the Democrats trying to do the same thing and creating their own memes and making fun of Republicans. Here's the difference. And there's a great example with J.D. Vance. So they always try to make J.D. Vance, they try to AI image him up and make fun of it. He's actually taken that and made it his profile picture. They think it's hilarious. The Republicans are laughing about this. Democrats are getting upset about it. And I don't understand why. You've got every creative director, every artist, actor, comedians, for the most part, not all of them, but for the most part, kind of identify with the Democrat Party. Can we have a nice generalization to start off Friday and assume that, right? Why don't they have anybody on their, let's call them their team, that understands humor and can do this well in new media. I don't know how else to put this. They don't get it. And the most effective thing that the Republican team is doing right now is laughing at this stuff. Here's your perfect example on this and why they're winning the messaging war in this shutdown. You can't think of a more straight-laced character in public life these days than Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, right? I mean, straight-laced, very straightforward, hardly ever cracks a smile. He's very serious about everything, because he's in politics. He is what he is. Even he pointed out the humor in the memes yesterday. Take a listen and a look.
Many of you asked me this morning about sombreros and memes and why Hakeem Jeffries is all alarmed by that. But look, these are games. These are sideshows. People are getting caught up in battles over social media memes. We've got to keep this is not a game. We've got to keep the government open for the people. I don't know why this is so complicated. And to my friend Hakeem, who I was asked about, man, just ignore it. I mean, Gavin Newsom was trolling me last night. He painted me like a minion. He painted me yellow with big glasses and overalls. And I thought it was hilarious.
That's how you handle that. I thought it was hilarious. Even Mike Johnson can see the humor in this. I will say this, trying to be as unbiased as I possibly can be, boy, the Democrats are just not handling this well. And this is why this is so important in this. It seems like a goofy thing. I was saying 2 days ago, don't overlook the importance of this meme thing, this humor thing, the name calling and all this other stuff. You may not like it. You may think it's nasty. I hear a lot of women saying this. I like Trump's policies, but does he have to be so nasty? Do we need this stuff? Well, kind of, yeah, because it gets the message across. And I didn't say this the other day, but let me try to explain it now why it works, if you're still not getting this. Classic example. This is what's happened probably tens of thousands of times throughout the country this week. Here's a classic example of why this works. Let's just take two dudes sitting at a bar, lunch break, right? And they're sitting there, and this is what usually happens in any kind of a bar scene restaurant, is you're waiting for your food order, two friends, and they go on their phones and they're catching up on something, and one will say, look, he's, yeah, that's fun. Did you see this? Did you see what Trump reposted? This thing? They put Hakeem Jeffries in a Mexican hat. It judges is mariachi music. Let me see that. Oh, yeah, that actually is pretty funny. And then here's why it works. And then they look into it, and then they say, I wonder why the Mexican hat? And then they dig a little further. Maybe they'll do a Grok search or a Google search or an AI thing, and they say, oh, I get it. He's doing that to point out that the Democrats they're making fun of, they want, the Republicans, Trump's saying that they want benefits for illegals. Oh, yeah, I get it. Never discount that, how important that is. That's why this humor part of it works. That's why they're winning the messaging war. Somebody told me a long, long time ago, some media expert, and this was even before the advent of social media, said, in traditional mainstream media or getting across any kind of media, he who laughs wins, because that's what people can relate to. And that's why so far, unless this changes, that the red team over there, they're winning the messaging war on this thing so far. But let's get to the serious update. What does it mean? So it probably means cutting some programs. I don't know. Maybe this is the opportunity they were looking for, but I thought this was pretty indicative of where they're going with this thing. Caroline Leavitt, White House press secretary, was asked outside yesterday in an outside press conference in the sun if these cuts are for real. Are they really going to shut down these programs? She says, oh, yeah.
On that, I wanted to ask you about that because he mentioned Russ Vought in that. I think that came out about 8 o'clock this morning about cutting certain programs that they deem are not necessary. Is that real or is that a negotiating tactic?
Oh, it's very real. And the Democrats should know that they put the White House and the president in this position. And if they don't want further harm on their constituents back home, then they need to reopen the government. It's very.
That's another way they're winning. It's not just the messaging on this to try to explain what they're doing. It's hurting their people. I mean, when you start taking away food assistance programs, they're not going to blame Trump on this. They're not going to. They're going to blame the Democrats. People aren't dumb. They understand this. But are they really going to cut back? Well, here's Trump yesterday.
There was an OMB memo going around suggesting that there might be firings during the shutdown. Do you think that will happen if the shutdown goes for a little bit of time, sir?
Well, there could be firings, and that's their fault. And it could also be other things. I mean, we could cut projects that they wanted, favorite projects, and they'd be permanently cut. So you could.
That's the key on that one. I don't think they had a. I think this is just my observation. I think this administration sees this as a golden opportunity to cut a lot of waste, which goes into the budget, which goes into the surplus to try to help that out. They're not messing around with this. They're really not. But I'll say this in one. This just makes me laugh. One more point on messaging. This is another reason why they win. And remember back to that little saying I just said a couple of minutes ago. He who laughs, any subject matter, wins. And if he can get you to laugh, they're winning on the messaging. Tell me this isn't funny, okay? You don't have to be a Trump supporter. You don't have to like this administration. Maybe you can't stand them. This is pretty damn clever. Let me see if I can bring this up. And sorry, I will describe it for you, audio-only listeners, but you can see the visual on this. So it's a government shutdown, partial, quote-unquote, non-essential employees. Well, that means the White House social media team. They're supposed to be furloughed right now, too, right? Quote-unquote, non-essential. So they have to keep the messaging going out. So I don't know if you saw this, but they've been doing little hand-drawn social media messages saying, our social media manager is on furlough right now, but we still wanted to get this message across. And let me see if I can bring this up, because it's usually just a video thing I bring up here. But this is what they brought up yesterday. If you can see it, audio-only listeners, this is a hand-drawn sombrero saying almost Friday that they posted yesterday. I'm sorry. That's pretty brilliant. That's any way you slice it. That's pretty brilliant. Again, he who laughs wins. All right, let's move on to the my favorite story of the week, maybe possibly the year so far, just because I can't believe this is actually happening. For you youngsters, yeah, I'm actually that guy now that says that. You youngsters. Little history lesson if you're not aware of why they called Jane Fonda Hanoi Jane. In the midst of the Vietnam War, while we've got American kids being killed, she goes over, at the request of North Vietnam, the Viet Cong, and she poses with and does a little interview. Went worldwide, went infamous with Viet Cong soldiers, the enemy at the time in a stupid war where our kids are getting killed. While also, by the way, our young American soldiers were coming back to American airports getting spit on. Okay, that actually happened. I will never forget, and this is maybe where I got it from. I'll never forget my dad's reaction to anything. Refused to watch, listen to, see anything involving Jane Fonda after that. He was so upset about that. So that's kind of dogged her whole career. But then she went on to make a bunch of movies. She's been very successful, obviously. You haven't heard from Jane Fonda for a long time, outside of like award shows. Why now? Why are we seeing so many interviews with Jane Fonda? Why is she everywhere? Let me bring this to your attention first, because it's all connected, and there's a reason why. Big headline yesterday on a lot of the entertainment. It was in Variety. It was in Rolling Stone, because this is coming from the entertainment side of things. Again, big part of the media. You ready? Billie Eilish, Gracie Abrams, Pedro Pascal, Spike Lee, and many others in Hollywood team with, you guessed it, Jane Fonda in free speech fight. More than 500, here's the byline, more than 550 of the world's biggest stars band together to revive the McCarthy-era Committee for the First Amendment. Now, I never quite bought into the whole thing about the 50s, the McCarthyism and all this other stuff, and there was a blacklist of actors that they accused of being communists, and they weren't allowed to be in movies and whatever. I always kind of went along with the line that we were all taught in school, or at least I was, that it was an attack on free speech, and it was a bad thing to do, and the blacklist of Hollywood, and it really truly wasn't until now where I looked at this and I said, yeah, but you know what? Maybe he wasn't all that far off. Because obviously it's always been about the media messaging. Whoever controls the media, and by the media I mean movies back in the day, of course television, news programming, entertainment television. Of course, now we have new media with all this social media stuff and digital media. Whoever controls this messaging to get their ideology across is the one in power, because that's what we're all, confronted with every single day. So back in the day, when they were trying to root out the communist effort back in Hollywood. Yeah, it was a thing. And yeah, people lost jobs, people lost careers. But does it surprise you at all now that we know what we know about the far, far left, that they would try to do that there actually was an effort to do that in the 50s and early 60s? It's really not that surprising. But why of all time, why is this happening now? Why is Hollywood commanding this so-called free speech effort? And why is Jane Fonda filling the void? Well, it's because of exactly that. You got to understand, and if this kind of upsets you, you got to put this in perspective. You have to understand, and again, I'm trying to be objective about this. I'm just looking at, okay, let's look at the Democrat team for right now. They're so devoid of any leadership, anything whatsoever, that the Hollywood people are coming out as their leaders. They really are. Again, when was the last time you saw, and she's done multiple interviews now, including attached to this free speech union, whatever the hell it is, coming out of Hollywood. Why do you see Jane Fonda now all the time? Because she's been trying to get her voice heard for 40 years. She's been trying to get back in. Why now? Because they have nothing else. They're really, really in some trouble. I'm talking about the DNC. Really in some trouble. That's why this kind of thing is happening. But here she was. Now, what is she talking about? What is she all about? Same similar messaging that she's had since the 60s, since she did the thing with the Viet Cong, which pissed everybody off, true patriotic Americans. Same messaging, except with a new twist for this modern day. She's throwing in the F word. That's right, the fascism word. So here she is just yesterday. Jane Fonda's back to lead the Democrats, everybody, and I cannot believe it.
Was I 100% happy with President Biden? Absolutely not. I get so mad at people who say, I don't like him, so I'm not going to vote. One young person, and I said, if we don't get Biden reelected, or then it was Kamala, we're going to have fascism. And this young person said to me, we already have fascism. We don't teach civics anymore, so they don't understand. What's happening now is leading to fascism.
Do you think Democrats need to change their messaging?
Absolutely.
How do you think they should change their messaging?
78 million people voted for Trump. They're not all MAGA. Mm-hmm. A lot of them were people who were just really angry and really hurting because they can't pay for things that they need. Healthcare, groceries, it's getting worse now. And so those people are going to have buyer's remorse.
There it is. I was waiting for that. See, that's the new messaging. That's the thing. That's the new buzzword, buyer's remorse. Let me just ask you something, because I know I have a lot of Trump supporters in my audience, my friend group, the hardcore OGs to the podcast. Do you know anybody, just think of anybody in your family, people you know of at work that happen to be, Trump supporters. Do you know anybody that has buyer's remorse over this? I know a lot of Trump voters. I've asked them directly because they've been trying to push this line about buyer's remorse for about 6 months. I've asked everybody, do you know anybody that's a Trump supporter that has buyer's remorse? Because I haven't found one. I've asked dozens and dozens of people, probably over 50. I mean, honestly, I put it online. I've asked people personally. Not one has buyer's remorse. So that's the first thing, the takeaway. You're going to hear that over and over and over again. That's the new media messaging from those folks and Hanoi Jane. Second thing is, this is kind of interesting. They're off the whole thing about fraudulent elections now. Have you noticed that? She says, 78 million people voted for Trump. Oh, you're acknowledging that. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. That's a step in the right direction. But the most damaging thing of all, here she is, and dares to say, people don't understand civics anymore. They don't understand that what's happening now leads to fascism. There's that F word. Everything they disagree with is fascism. I don't like it. It's fascism. And dares to tie that into people not understanding civics. She's the one that doesn't understand civics. She's the one that doesn't understand that if it was true fascism, she'd never be able to go on all these interviews these days, this week, and going forward, and say it's fascism. She'd never be able to call Trump a dictator if he was really a dictator. She's the one that doesn't get that, but it doesn't matter because you're still going to push that. But don't worry. This is your real takeaway. Remember who controls the message. She's been trying to get back in to prominence, not in entertainment, in politics, for about 45 years. She's been trying to weasel her way back in, but there was no room. There was no opening. Even the Democrats who were strong, the Bill Clinton days, Obama days, whatever it was, they were like, oh, it's nice. Thanks for your donation, but we got this thing covered. Now they have nothing. They're completely bereft of leadership, which is why, by default, people like her and the Hollywood actors are weaseling their way back in. And I love the free speech thing from this new actors union. This is the same industry. Many of those same people listed, by the way, the prominent people joining this free speech force. The same people that wanted to take your rights away to speak out against the COVID vaccine. Same people that wanted to shut you in your house and take away your business. The same people, same exact industry that wouldn't let you see your grandma when she was dying of COVID and she didn't understand why. Never forget that. These are the same people that now all of a sudden are in favor of free speech. Led by none other than Hanoi Jane. Now that's annoying, I get it. But take the good news. It means there's nothing there. That's all it means. They have nothing. So that's your takeaway. But the biggest takeaway, remember this through the weekend, or if you're just listening or watching now in the replay, remember this. It's all about this messaging. He who laughs wins. And so far, the red team is kicking the blue team's ass on this because people are starting to understand who's to blame for this shutdown thing. So remember that as well. But the most important thing is have a Friday, have a weekend. Be safe, enjoy it, enjoy your freedoms. Have a great time. Thank you, as always, for the follows and the listens and all that good stuff. I always appreciate that. Audio podcast only, by the way. You got to press subscribe on Spotify. It's follow if you do that so you get updates on when the new shows are coming out and all that good stuff. And for everybody else, thanks for being here. Appreciate you. I will talk to you on Monday unless something else comes up. We have to do an emergency pod. But other than that, I'll talk to you Monday. Having a wicked awesome weekend.